It should have been our night. Instead, it became the night I realized I had married a ghost. We toasted at my husband's promotion dinner, and he froze. He had shown up with his assistant. He raised his glass to me, but his eyes searched for her. They thought I would shatter. They didn't know I wrote the code that would burn it all down. My name is Alara Vance. I'm 38 years old, and I am the head of data analytics at Quantum Leap Analytics. The air inside the gilded spire was heavy, thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low, self-satisfied hum of Chicago's elite. It was a place designed to make you feel small, suffocated by velvet and antique gold. I was there, ostensibly, to celebrate my husband, but secretly, I was there to celebrate myself. Project Chimera was finished. After 18 months of clandestine work, nights spent refining code while my husband, Julian, was supposedly working late, my revolutionary market prediction algorithm was complete. It was a masterpiece of data analysis that would change fintech. Tonight was supposed to be my silent victory lap. It was also, officially, the dinner celebrating Julian's promotion to brand director at Halicon Brands. He arrived 20 minutes late, not with an apology, but with a woman on his arm. She was young, perhaps 26, and dazzling in a way that burns the eyes. She wore a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who has never been told no. Julian glided to the table, his smile as smooth and polished as the marble floor. "Ilara, darling," he said, his voice booming for the benefit of his colleagues. "So sorry. Got held up. I want you to meet Serafina Hayes. She's my new executive assistant, an absolute rock star." He introduced her, but his hand remained on the small of her back. As she slid into the seat beside him, the seat that should have been next to me, he leaned in and whispered something. Her laughter was bright and sharp. "I am an analyst. I process data. Data point 1. The intimacy of the whisper. Data point 2. The way his eyes tracked her as she settled in. Data point 3. The watch. On her slender wrist, gleaming under the chandelier, was the vintage chronograph I had spent 6 months tracking down for Julian's last birthday. The one he'd claimed was too ostentatious to wear to the office. The one he kept in his desk drawer. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. Before I could speak, Julian's mother, Diana, rushed to the table. Diana, the woman whose catastrophic medical debts I had been quietly paying off for the last 5 years, bypassed me entirely. "Serafina, darling," Diana cooed, grasping the younger woman's hands. "You look absolutely exquisite. Julian, she's perfect." Diana shot me a cool, brief nod, the kind one gives to the waitstaff. I was no longer family. I was infrastructure. The dinner was a pantomime. I moved food around my plate, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses washing over me like static. I watched Julian and Serafina. They were a closed circuit, a private joke shared with a glance, a light touch of his hand on her arm. Then, the dreaded sound of a knife tapping against a glass. Julian stood, basking in the glow of the room. He thanked his mentors. He thanked the Halicon board for having the foresight to approve his groundbreaking initiative. That phrase, groundbreaking initiative, snagged in my mind. Julian was a marketer. He was handsome, charming, and utterly devoid of technical skill. He couldn't write a line of code to save his life. He raised his glass, his eyes finally finding me at the far end of the table. "And, of course," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "I want to toast my wife, Alara." He paused, just long enough for it to be an insult. "Who has always been so supportive." The table turned to me, expectant. Supportive. He had relegated me to the role of a silent benefactor, a sturdy piece of furniture. I did not drink. I stood up. My hand was perfectly steady as I lifted my own glass. The murmur of the room died. "We toasted at my husband's promotion dinner," I said. My voice was not loud, but it was cold, and it sliced through the warm air. And he froze. Julian's plastic smile wavered. His knuckles were white on the stem of his glass. He froze because he showed up with his assistant. I shifted my gaze, locking it onto Serafina. Her bright confidence vanished, replaced by a sudden, ugly pallor. I looked back at my husband. And he got promoted, I finished, my voice ringing with clarity. On a project he stole directly from my computer. I did not run. I walked. I placed my linen napkin neatly beside my plate, stood, and pushed in my chair. The deafening silence that filled the room as I left the gilded spire was a physical force, pressing against my back. I did not look at Julian. I did not look at her. I bypassed the valet and stepped into the cool Chicago night. Hailing a cab, I did not go home. Home, the stone townhouse in Lincoln Park, was no longer a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. Quantum leap analytics, I told the driver. I sat in the back of the cab, my posture perfect, my hands folded in my lap. There was no shaking. There were no tears. Tears are an emotional response, a biological distraction from a tactical problem. My mind was operating with the clean, cold precision of the algorithm I had just perfected. The affair was irrelevant, a dull, predictable human error. It was messy, biological, and, ultimately, boring. I was not hunting for evidence of infidelity. I was hunting for evidence of theft. Julian's CEO had praised his groundbreaking initiative. Julian was a brand manager. His talents lay in focus groups, PowerPoint aesthetics, and using the word synergy with a straight face. He was a salesman, a charismatic shell. He did not possess the technical foundation to build a groundbreaking initiative any more than he possessed the ability to build a nuclear reactor. I arrived at my office. The building was dark, sleeping, attended only by a skeleton crew of security. I badged into my lab. The air was cool, filled with the gentle hum of dedicated servers. This was my true home. I sat at my terminal and accessed my personal cloud. This was not the Quantum Leap corporate server. This was my private sandbox, the encrypted space where Project Chimera was born. 18 months of my life, my intellectual property, my code. I didn't open the algorithm itself. I opened the metadata, the access logs. My permissions were the only ones listed. My IP at home, my IP at the office, my secured travel VPN. I scrolled back. 1 month, 2 months, 3. There. An IP address I did not recognize. It first appeared 93 days ago. It had accessed the core directory 12 times since then, always between the hours of 2 and 4 in the morning. The downloads were small at first, then larger, culminating in a full download of the final Chimera build just last week. I ran a reverse trace on the IP. It was masked, routed through 3 different shell servers. But I am a data analyst who specializes in finding patterns in chaos. It took me less than 5 minutes to bypass the proxies and find the source registration. The IP was registered to a holding company, newly formed, Hayes Innovative Solutions. Hayes, Serafina. My heart did not pound. It simply ticked, a cold metronome marking the seconds. This was not just a betrayal. This was a conspiracy. But I needed the bridge. The log proved the access, but not the implementation. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a hard drive. It was Julian's old backup drive from his home office laptop. He had upgraded 3 months ago coincidentally and asked me to professionally wipe this one. He trusted me to destroy the data. I had not. I had made a mirror image of the drive before running the wipe. A standard precaution in a data-driven household. Julian's data hygiene was as lazy as his ambition. He thought dragging files to the trash and hitting empty was secure. I plugged the drive into my forensic rig and ran a deep data recovery script. I wasn't looking for text messages. I was looking for file fragments, cached documents, deleted emails. The recovered data began to populate. Most of it was useless old photos, fantasy football spreadsheets, browser histories. And then I found the email cache, a PST file he thought he had deleted. The twist was not that he was sleeping with her. The twist was that he was paying her. Serafina Hayes was not just an executive assistant. I found a string of emails between her personal account and Julian's. Attached was her resume. She was a programmer, a very good one, with a computer science degree. Julian hadn't just stolen my work. He didn't have the technical vocabulary to even understand my work. He had hired Serafina to steal it for him. I read the chain. Julian, here is the access I mentioned. It's dense, academic. I need you to translate this, repackage it. Make it sound like a Halicon strategy, not a thesis paper. Serafina, this is far more than you described. This is a predictive engine. It's genius. To reverse engineer this and repackage it as your own insight platform will be a significant undertaking. My fee is attached. And then, the payment. I cross-referenced the date with our joint savings account. A withdrawal of $50,000. The memo Julian had put on the transfer, kitchen remodel deposit. He had used our money to pay her to analyze, interpret, and rebrand my life's work. His promotion, his bonus, his new rock star assistant, his entire future. He had built it all on my career. He had stolen my genius, and now I was going to use that same genius to dismantle him. The antiseptic cool of the server room was a bomb. My anger was not the hot, sloppy rage of a jilted wife. It was a clean, white flame. The emails proved this was not a crime of passion. It was a calculated corporate conspiracy. The affair was just the lubricant for the deal, a biological transaction to secure his accomplice. The real betrayal, the unforgivable sin, was the theft of my mind. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had plagiarized my life. Julian was a creature of surfaces, of branding and charm. He had used his tools to acquire what he wanted. Now, I would use mine. I would destroy him with the very data he thought he controlled. The clock on my terminal read 3:07 in the morning. I picked up my phone and dialed. Miranda Cole doesn't sleep. She waits. She is the shark that circles the bloody waters of high-asset divorce and intellectual property theft. She answered on the second ring, her voice perfectly alert. Ilara. He stole Project Chimera, I said, bypassing all pleasantries. He and an accomplice repackaged it. Halicon Brands just promoted him for it. They're calling it his groundbreaking initiative. There was a sharp, clinical intake of breath. The pre-nuptial agreement, she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Section 4, subsection B. I confirmed. All intellectual property developed by either party during the marriage remains the sole and exclusive property of the originating party. She recited from memory. We filed the provisional patents for Chimera under your name alone 18 months ago. Ilara, Project Chimera is 100% yours. Halicon is exposed to catastrophic liability. Good, I said. Prepare the injunctions. Prepare the lawsuit. But we are not filing them. Not yet. What are you planning? Ilara. Her voice held no judgment, only a surgeon's curiosity. A controlled demolition, I replied, and hung up. A lawsuit would get me money. An injunction would stop them. But it was unsatisfying. It was reactive. I am an architect. I opened a new development environment. Julian and his pet programmer had stolen the finished product. They were amateurs. They didn't understand the architecture. They had taken the engine, but they didn't know about the diagnostic backdoors I build into the foundation of all my work. I began to write. This was not a delete script. Deletion is clumsy, a blunt instrument. This was a scalpel, a kill switch, woven into the core logic, disguised as a redundant data verification string. It would lie dormant, invisible to any diagnostic Serafina might run. But when activated by a remote trigger, it wouldn't just crash the system. It would poison it. My code was designed to invert the algorithm's core function. Instead of identifying positive market trends, it would seek out and recommend catastrophic risks. Instead of optimizing ad spend, it would hemorrhage capital into dead demographics. When Julian hit execute at his launch, his Insight platform would, in real time, feed Halicon's investors a stream of financially suicidal predictions, all rendered in beautiful, confident charts. It would be designed to wipe out millions in projected profits in under 10 minutes. The plan formed, clear and cold. Halicon Brands was holding its global live launch for the Insight platform next Friday. That would be the stage. Before I could proceed, I needed to assess the full extent of the damage. The algorithm was the primary offense. But I knew Julian. His greed was impulsive. I logged into my personal wealth management portal, the one that aggregated all our assets. The joint savings account showed the $50,000 withdrawal for Serafina, disguised as a home repair. I ran a full credit check. Mine was clean. I pulled the property records for our Lincoln Park house. My house. The house I had owned free and clear, 5 years before I met him. My blood pressure didn't rise. It just stopped. There was a new lien. A UCC filing from a secondary lender, dated 3 weeks ago. An application for a second mortgage on my property. The amount $250,000. I clicked the link to the digital paperwork. And there, on the final authorization page, next to his signature, was mine. A forgery. A clumsy, amateurish digital scan of my name, probably lifted from an old insurance document. He was trying to leverage my primary asset to fund his new life. I picked up the phone. It was now 4:15 in the morning. Miranda answered on the first ring. He forged my signature on a second mortgage application for my house, I said. My voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. The silence on the line was different this time. It was heavy. Ilara, Miranda said, her voice dropping, that is not a divorce proceeding. That is a felony. That is bank fraud. That is criminal. I know, I said. Add it to the plan. The kill switch was complete, a digital time bomb waiting for its moment. But before the demolition, I had to build the ark. I had to secure my assets, my future, and everything Julian had not yet managed to poison or steal. While I waited for the launch, I began the financial disassembly of my marriage. My first call at 7 in the morning was not to the bank, but to Miranda. Activate Section 7, I said. Asset separation protocols. Understood, she replied. Within an hour, a hold was placed on every joint account we shared. The prenup, which Julian had laughed at when we signed it. Why so cynical, darling, we're forever, was now a precise legal weapon. He would still receive his direct deposit, but the joint savings, the money market account, the accounts from which he paid for his luxuries all were frozen, pending full review. He would try his debit card at lunch and be declined. Next, our brokerage portfolio. It held just over $800,000, a mix of index funds and tech stocks I had personally managed. I called my broker at exactly 9:01, the second the market opened. Liquidate it, I ordered. All of it. Today. Ilara, that's a significant taxable event. Are you sure you don't want to discuss strategy? The strategy is liquidity. Sell everything and wire the post-tax proceeds to the escrow account Miranda Cole provided you. I didn't wait for an argument. I hung up. Third the car. The Porsche Panamera he drove. The one he claimed was a testament to his new director status. I pulled the lease agreement. It was, as I remembered, leased not to Julian Vance, but to Quantum Leap Analytics as a corporate vehicle for its head of data. Me. I had let him use it as a perk. I called the leasing company. This is Ilara Vance at Quantum Leap. I need to report a company vehicle, license plate. I read the number. As being in the possession of an unauthorized individual. Please retrieve it immediately. His name is Julian Vance. You can find him at the Halicon Brands corporate office. Let him walk out of his building to find an empty parking space. Finally, I attended to the parasites. My phone rang at noon, just as I'd anticipated. It wasn't Julian. He was likely still in meetings, basking in his fraudulent glory. It was his mother. Ilara. Diana's voice was a shriek. What have you done? The nursing home just called me. They said my payment was declined. I sipped my coffee. That's correct. Diana, you bitch after all Julian has done for you. You embarrassed him at that dinner, and now this, you are a petty, vindictive. Diana, I interrupted, my voice perfectly level. The $5,000 monthly payment for your assisted living was a courtesy I extended from my personal finances. That courtesy has been rescinded. Your son, the new brand director with the groundbreaking initiative, should have no trouble assuming the cost. Send him the bill. Do not call this number again. I disconnected the call and blocked her number. For his sister. I didn't even bother with a phone call. I simply logged into my primary credit card account, found the supplementary card under her name, and clicked deactivate. Let her discover her shopping allowance was gone the next time she tried to buy designer shoes. I had built the walls. I had secured my perimeter. I sat back, running a final diagnostic scan of my financial exposure. I checked my personal retirement accounts, my Quantum Leap stock options, and the trust. My sister had passed away 3 years ago, leaving her daughter, my niece, in my care. I was the financial guardian for her college trust fund, an account I managed with religious diligence. It was separate from everything, walled off from my personal finances. Julian knew about it, of course, but he had no access. I logged in. The balance was wrong. My breath hitched. This was not the cold anger of the office. This was a hot, suffocating panic. I ran the transaction history. A withdrawal. $50,000. Transferred 6 weeks ago to an external account I didn't recognize. I traced the account. It was Julian's. I remembered the conversation. He had come to me, claiming he had an incredible short-term investment opportunity. Something guaranteed to return 20% in 2 months. He needed capital. I had refused, telling him it was too risky and that my own money was tied up. He must have found the checkbook. He had forged my signature. Again. He didn't just steal from me. He didn't just steal from my company. He stole from my dead sister's child. This was not a theft of money. It was a theft of a future. A violation of the sacred. This was not a broken marriage. This was a cancer, and I was the cure. The theft of my niece's trust fund was the final line. It was an act of such profound, casual cruelty that it snapped the last thread of restraint I possessed. This was no longer about a marriage. It was about cauterizing a wound before it turned septic. The financial quarantine was in place, but the masterstroke, my kill switch, was still sitting isolated on my private server. I needed a delivery vector. Breaching Halicon Brand's corporate firewall from the outside was not an option. Their security protocols were robust, and any brute force attempt would leave a digital footprint, a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to me. I couldn't risk my own career at Quantum Leap. I didn't need to break the door down. I needed someone on the inside to open it for me. I needed the rock star. I needed Serafina Hayes. From the recovered emails, I knew she was a talented programmer. From her actions, I knew she was ruthlessly ambitious. And from her willingness to attach herself to a fool like Julian, I knew she was arrogant. She believed she was the smartest person in every room. Arrogance is the single greatest vulnerability in any system, human or digital. I spent 2 hours building a legend. I created a convincing, high-level professional profile for one Dr. Eris Thorne, a fictitious senior vice president of talent acquisition and applied AI at Google. I fabricated his entire career history, complete with keynote speeches at non-existent tech conferences and links to ghost-written papers on machine learning. I purchased a disposable domain, Google Talent AI.com, which looked plausible at a glance. Then, I crafted the email. It was a masterpiece of social engineering, designed to bypass her skepticism by appealing directly to her ego. I sent it to her personal email address, the one I'd found in Julian's cache. The subject line read, "Confidential Inquiry Halicon's Insight, Platform and Your Next Move." "Dear Ms. Hayes," it began. "My team and I have been analyzing the pre-launch data from Halicon's Insight platform. While the public-facing branding is corporate, The underlying logic structure is exceptionally elegant. It shows a level of algorithmic optimization that, frankly, we did not expect to see from a company like Halicon. I was praising my own work, and by extension, her translation of it. We believe the architect of that engine is being wasted in their current role. We are actively and confidentially searching for a team lead for our applied AI division in Zurich. The position comes with a compensation package in the high six figures, plus significant stock options. I was offering her an escape, a validation of her genius, and a future far richer than Julian could ever provide. Julian Vance is listed as the project head, I continued, but a review of his professional history suggests he is not the technical mind behind the work. We believe it's you. This was the hook. I was telling her what she already believed, that she was the real star, and Julian was just the suit. We would like to fast-track an interview. However, due to the sensitive nature of the role, we require a small skills verification. Attached is a compressed file containing a short logic problem. It's a standard part of our executive screening, just a way to see how you approach a complex variable challenge. It shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. Please run the diagnostic on your work machine, as we're also interested in the performance metrics of your current development environment. We look forward to hearing from you. I attached the file exec logic test. Zip. The test was the Trojan. It was not a blunt instrument. It was a ghost. Now, I waited. I monitored the access log on the email server. The bait was in the water. It took her 3 hours. At 4:30 in the afternoon, a notification pinged. The email was opened. 10 minutes later, another ping. The file was downloaded. I could picture her perfectly sitting at her desk at Halicon, heart pounding. She'd be torn between loyalty to her lover and the staggering, life-changing opportunity I'd just laid at her feet. But greed and ego always win. She was probably already calculating how to leave Julian without him making a scene. She wanted to prove she was good enough for Google. 1 minute later, my private server registered a new connection. Serafina had run the test. The file executed precisely as planned. On her screen, it would have shown a simple, spinning, analyzing icon, followed by a message that read, "Verification complete. Thank you. A representative will be in touch within 48 hours. But in the background, in the space of 3 seconds, the Trojan had used her authenticated credentials to access Halicon's production server. It located the core ADL file of the Insight algorithm. It read the code, found the exact injection point I had designated, and seamlessly inserted my kill switch. The Trojan did not attack. It did not corrupt or delete anything. It simply delivered its payload and then, to cover its tracks, it used a native system function to delete itself from her machine, leaving no trace of its existence. The kill switch was inside. It was now part of the Insight platform, sleeping soundly in the heart of Halicon's most secure server. It was programmed to do nothing until it received one specific trigger, the system timestamp matching exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. Central Time, on Friday, the exact moment Julian was scheduled to hit execute on the stage of his global live launch. The trap was set. The bait was taken. All I had to do was wait for the show to begin. The kill switch was planted, the financial walls were built, and the timer was ticking. For the first time in 96 hours, I left the cold, sterile environment of my office and went in search of a human connection, or perhaps absolution. Ben Calloway is my oldest friend, the closest thing I have to a conscience. We met in a graduate-level seminar on cryptographic theory, and while I went into the chaotic, predictive world of data analytics, he went into the rigid, binary world of cybersecurity. He is a man of ethics, firewalls, and absolute rules. We met at a small, anonymous coffee shop far from either of our offices. He looked at me over the rim of his mug, his eyes full of the concern I hadn't yet allowed myself to feel. "You look," he started, then trailed off. "You look like you're running on a different operating system. Alara." "I am," I said. "I needed to talk to you." Not as an analyst, but as a friend. I laid out a heavily redacted version of the plan. I told him about the IP theft, the repackaging of Project Chimera. I told him about Serafina. I told him about the fraudulent mortgage application. I told him about the money stolen from my niece's trust. I told him that Miranda was handling the legal demolition. He listened, his expression growing darker with every detail. He forged your signature on your house. Ben shook his head, looking physically ill. This is scorched earth? Ilara, he's not just a bad husband, he's a criminal. I know, I said. Miranda is handling the civil side. The police will handle the criminal fraud. Good, he said, nodding. So, it's done. You let the lawyers and the cops do their work. You take him for everything he has. You're free. It's not enough, I said quietly. Ben's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? What did you leave out? He's not just being sued. Halicon isn't just being served an injunction. They are having a global launch for my work on Friday. I'm ensuring it doesn't go well. What did you do? He asked, his voice low. I'm just making sure the truth comes out, in a public forum. It was a half-truth, but it was enough. Ben sat back, running a hand over his face. Ilara, no, this isn't you. This is vigilantism. You're putting your entire career at risk. You're opening yourself up to a countersuit, to criminal charges. This is what lawyers are for. Let Miranda handle it. Lawyers handle money, I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. I'm handling the justice. He didn't just take my money. Ben, he didn't just forge a signature. He took my work. He took my trust. He took my niece's future. He took my life. And what are you doing? He shot back, his voice firm. You're acting just like him. You're using deception. You're infiltrating a system. Don't become the monster you are hunting. Ilara, what's left of you when this is over? What if this hollows you out? I faltered. For one agonizing second. His words hit their mark. He was right. I was using a Trojan. I was planning a corporate attack that could cost innocent people their jobs. I was acting from a place of cold, calculated rage. What if I burned Julian to the ground, only to find myself standing alone in the ashes, just as empty and corrupt as he was? The victory I envisioned suddenly felt hollow. My phone, sitting face down on the table, vibrated. I glanced at it. It was not a text. It was an automated security alert from my personal retirement fund, my 401k, the account that held my premarital, pre-Julian savings. Alert 3. 3 unsuccessful login attempts from an unknown IP address. I opened the notification. The login attempts, time-stamped from 2 minutes ago, were not random. Username Evance password attempt. 1 Ilara Loves Julian password attempt. 2 Chimera 2023 password attempt. 3 Lincoln Park. The blood left my face. Ben saw my expression. Ilara, what is it? Julian, right now, at this very moment, was not remorseful. He was not panicked. He was sitting at a computer somewhere, enraged by his frozen bank accounts, and was actively, methodically trying to crack into the last remaining wholly personal asset I owned. He was trying to steal what was left. My doubt evaporated. The brief flicker of moral uncertainty was extinguished, replaced by the clean, cold certainty of a surgeon. This was not an act of revenge. This was not me becoming a monster. This was self-defense. This was a rabid animal rattling the last locked door, and I was on the other side, holding the only weapon that would put it down. I locked my phone and looked up at Ben. His worried face was waiting for an answer to his question, the question of whether I would become a monster. I slid my phone back into my pocket. He's right, I said to Ben. It's a mistake to get my hands dirty. Ben's face flooded with relief. Good. Oh, good. Ilara, let Miranda handle it. Just walk away. You're right, I said. Thank you for the coffee. I know what to do. I stood up and left him there. As I walked out into the street, I pulled out my phone and sent him a text. Thanks for the advice, but the surgery has to proceed. The days leading up to the launch were a study in parallel realities. In Julian's, he was a king ascending his throne, the toast of Halicon brands, blind and deaf to the tectonic plates shifting beneath his feet. In mine, I was an engineer in a soundproof room, methodically checking the charges that would bring his temple down. He was oblivious. The kill switch was planted, a digital cancer sleeping soundly in the server, and he had no idea. He must have discovered the frozen joint accounts by now. His debit card would have been declined at some expensive lunch. He would have discovered the repossessed Porsche, but his arrogance was so vast, so profound, that he would interpret these as the petty, hysterical actions of a jilted wife. He thought he was dealing with an emotional problem. He had no idea he was dealing with a structural one. He and Serafina had moved into a new penthouse apartment in River North. I knew this because the first month's rent and the deposit had been drawn from a new credit line Julian had opened, a line secured by the promotion bonus he had not yet actually received. He was spending the projected earnings of my stolen work, building a glass house in the sky on a foundation of pure fraud. On Tuesday night, I received the voicemail. I didn't answer the call. I never would again. I let it go to the transcription service, then read the cold text, but I forced myself to listen to the audio once, just to calibrate my resolve. His voice was smooth, paternal, dripping with the false magnanimity of a winner. "Ilara," he began, followed by a theatrical, weary sigh. "Look, I know you're hurt. I get it. Your little joke at the restaurant. Frankly, it was childish. It was embarrassing, mostly for you. But we need to be adults. Let's be realistic." He paused, as if giving me time to absorb his wisdom. "We both know where this is going. We're getting a divorce. And I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not that guy. I'll even be generous. Generous. He would be generous with the money he had stolen from my niece's college fund. I did not reply. I did not delete it. I simply forwarded the audio file, untouched, to Miranda Cole with the subject line Exhibit C. I, on the other hand, went to work. My life did not stop. On Thursday, the day before the launch, I stood in the main boardroom at Quantum Leap. I presented my other project, a new risk assessment model for emerging markets, to my own CEO and the executive board. My CEO, Mrs. Thorne, a woman who deals only in results, watched the presentation, her gaze sharp and analytical. When I finished, the room applauded. "This is stellar. Ilara," Thorne said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Your ability to find actionable patterns in this level of noise is why you are our greatest asset." "Thank you, Mrs. Thorne," I said. "I just aim to make sure the projections are accurate." As the room cleared, she motioned me over. "Big day for Halicon tomorrow. I hear they're making a massive push into the predictive space. Julian's project, isn't it?" I met her gaze, my expression perfectly neutral. "Yes, they're calling it Insight. I've heard a lot about it." I took a slow sip of water. "I am very curious to see how it performs under live launch conditions." That night, I was at home, in the Lincoln Park house he couldn't steal, running a final diagnostic on the Halicon server through my remote, anonymous proxy. The kill switch was stable, undetected. An email notification chimed. It was not a work email. It was from a personal Gmail account, one I recognized from the backup drive. Hayes88gmail.com. My heart did not beat faster. It just became heavier, a cold stone in my chest. The subject line was empty. The body of the message was short, riddled with the typos of someone drunk on power and, likely, expensive champagne. "I won, you old hag. He's here with me, in our new place. He never loved you. He just felt sorry for you. You were just the boring, stable stepping stone. Enjoy being alone. BW. Thanks for the algorithm." I stared at the last line. Thanks for the algorithm. She thought she was twisting the knife. She had no idea she had just handed me a signed, dated, and time-stamped confession of conspiracy to commit intellectual property theft. I did not reply. I saved the message, headers and all, as a secure PDF. I forwarded it to Miranda. Exhibit D. I looked at the clock. 9 hours to go. I went to the kitchen, brewed a cup of tea, and waited for the dawn. Friday, 9:45 in the morning. I was not at home. I was in the main boardroom at Quantum Leap, seated at the back of the room, a black ceramic mug of coffee steaming in my hands. My entire analytics team was here, ostensibly for a competitor review. My CEO, Mrs. Thorne, was at the head of the table, her arms crossed, watching intently. On the 100-inch plasma screen at the front of the room, the Halicon brand's global launch was already in progress. The branding was slick, all sapphire blues and confident, clean fonts. They had spared no expense. At 9:47, he walked on stage. Julian, my husband. He was radiant, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost $10,000. He looked rested, confident, like a man who had truly earned his place. He waved to the cheering audience, his smile wide and blinding. The camera cut to a shot of the front row, and there she was, Serafina. She was looking up at him not just with admiration, but with possession. She clapped, her eyes shining. "Today is not just a launch," Julian began, his voice echoing with practiced charisma. "It's a paradigm shift. For years, Halicon has led the world in brand strategy. But today, we redefine that strategy. We are no longer just reacting to the market. We are predicting it." My team at Quantum Leap shifted, intrigued. This was our space he was claiming. Julian paced the stage, a remote in his hand. "We've all seen predictive models. They're clunky. They're slow. They tell you what you already know. Our platform, Insight, is different. It is a living, breathing intelligence. And it is the brainchild of my groundbreaking initiative." I took a slow, steady sip of coffee. It was scalding hot, but I felt nothing. "But don't take my word for it," he said, moving to a large terminal at center stage. "Let's see it in action. Right now, I am going to ask Insight to analyze the next quarter's consumer spending trends. In real time. It will process live global data and tell us exactly where to allocate our resources." He typed theatrically on the keyboard. The main screen behind him split, showing a dashboard of data feeds. "It's 9:59, Julian said, checking his watch, which I now realized was a new one. "Let's give it a running start." He looked at the audience, at Serafina, at the camera. He was the king of his world. "Execute," he said, his voice full of triumph. The clock on the wall of our boardroom read 9:59 and 50 seconds. My heart was a metronome. 10 seconds. He pressed the physical enter key on the terminal. 9. The data feeds on the screen began to whirl. 8. Charts began to populate, lines moving upward. 7. Julian smiled, gesturing to the rising graphs. "You see, it's already projecting a 20% lift in." 6. The lines on the graphs stopped rising. They stuttered. 5. The data feeds froze, then dissolved into meaningless strings of characters. 4. The room in the live stream fell silent. Julian's smile twitched. He tapped the keyboard. 3. The timer on my kill switch, embedded deep within Halicon's server, hit 0. 2. The protocol executed. 1. The dashboard behind Julian vanished. It was replaced by a single line of text, repeated over and over, cascading down the screen in a massive, bold, red font. "Fraud, fraud, 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 fraud." Julian stared, his face a mask of utter incomprehension. He looked at the tech booth, panic rising in his eyes. "We seem to be having he stammered, "a slight technical." "So, but the algorithm wasn't just displaying the word. My code was more elegant than that. It began projecting, Not market trends, but the server logs from my personal cloud, my IP address, my file names, Project, Chimera, Build 3.0. Then, Serafina's Shell Company, IP, Hayes, Innovative, Solutions, the download dates, the file sizes. Turn it off, Julian was whispering, a desperate hiss into his microphone. Turn it off. But the second part of the payload had already deployed. At the exact moment the screen displayed fraud, the Trojan horse script on the Halicon mail server activated. It generated a single email. It was sent from Halicon's own internal server, making it authenticated and verified. The recipient list, the entire Halicon board of directors, the firm's top 50 largest investors, and the lead financial editors at the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and the Financial Times. The email was simple. Subject: Urgent Compliance Audit Insight, Platform Launch. Body attached are internal due diligence files regarding the Insight platform, demonstrating that 100% of the core intellectual property was stolen from Ilara Vance of Quantum Leap Analytics. The theft was orchestrated by Julian Vance, with the paid assistance of Serafina Hayes. Attached were 3 files. 1, the server logs, showing the theft. 2, the bank transfer from Julian to Serafina for $50,000. 3, Serafina's confessional email from the night before. BTW, thanks for the algorithm. Back on the live stream, the feed suddenly went black. The screen just read, "This stream has ended." In the boardroom at Quantum Leap, there was a stunned, heavy silence. Everyone was looking at me. Mrs. Thorne turned, her face unreadable. I just took one last slow sip of my coffee. It was noon. 2 hours had passed since the live stream went black. My office at Quantum Leap was silent. The boardroom had cleared out 90 minutes prior, my analytics team filing out in a state of quiet, profound shock. My CEO, Mrs. Thorne, had simply looked at me, given me a single, sharp nod that I interpreted as, "We will discuss this later," and left me alone. I was not celebrating. I was running a final diagnostic. The market was in chaos. Halicon brand stock had been officially halted by the NYSE, but not before it had hemorrhaged 22% of its total value in pre-market trading. News tickers were in a frenzy, speculating about catastrophic data breaches, internal sabotage, and massive financial fraud. My desk phone rang, not my mobile, my private office line. The caller ID displayed C. Caldwell, CEO, Halicon Brands. I let it ring 3 times, the sound cutting through the silence. On the 4th ring, I picked up the receiver. Ilara Vance, Ms. Vance. The voice was not the confident, booming baritone of a Fortune 500 CEO. It was a dry, high-pitched rasp. I believe we need to talk. Immediately. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Mr. Caldwell, I said, my voice cool and even. Any further communication will come from my attorney, Miranda Cole. I believe she's preparing a federal lawsuit for intellectual property theft as we speak. It sounds like you're having an internal issue. There was a choked sound, a desperate inhalation. Please, Ms. Vance, Ilara, please. That isn't necessary. We are handling the internal matter. Julian Vance and Serafina Hayes are currently in my office, with security. We understand the severity of the situation. Then I'm glad we're clear, I said. Goodbye. Wait, he shouted, the sound cracking with panic. The code, your code. It didn't just crash the launch. It's still running. It's tearing through our backup servers. It's executing a purge protocol. We're losing everything. We can't stop it. I almost smiled. The kill switch was far more elegant than that. It had been designed to do its job and then self-delete precisely 60 minutes after activation. It was already gone, erased from their system an hour ago. The destruction Caldwell was witnessing was not my code. It was the blind, idiotic panic of his own IT department, frantically attempting to purge the corrupted data and In their haste, destroying their own backups. They were burning their own house down. I would not be correcting his assumption. We are prepared to compensate you, Ms. Vance, he continued, his voice dropping to a desperate plea. Substantially. For the intellectual property. Whatever you want. A licensing fee? A settlement. Just name it. But we need you to come down to our headquarters. Right now. We need you. To help us turn it off. I looked at the clock on my wall. 12:03 p.m. The trap was sprung. The rats were caught. All that remained was the extermination. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said. I hung up the phone before he could respond. My next call was to Miranda. It's time. Caldwell just invited me to Hallicon Tower. He thinks he's negotiating. It's not a negotiation. Miranda's voice was sharp, a razor's edge. It's an unconditional surrender. Bring the finalized divorce papers, I instructed. The ones with the $0 alimony clause and the full waiver of all marital assets. And call Detective Miller. Tell him his suspect is detained in the Hallicon executive boardroom and that we are on our way. He's already on standby, Miranda confirmed. I'll meet you in the lobby. I hung up. I stood and walked to the full-length mirror by my office door. I adjusted the lapels of my black blazer. My eyes were clear. My hand was steady. This was not a meeting. This was not a settlement. This was a closing. This was the final performance. Before I left, I sat back down at my terminal for one final act. I opened a new email. I addressed it to Detective Miller at the Chicago Police Department, Financial Crimes Unit. I had already met with him twice regarding the mortgage fraud. He had the file. He was waiting for the right moment to act, but I had held one piece of evidence back. The worst piece. Subject supplementary evidence, Julian Vance, case 903 VG. Detective Miller, Mr. Vance is currently detained by private security in the executive boardroom at Hallicon Tower, 1 West Wacker Drive. My attorney and I are en route to meet him now. As we discussed, I am attaching the final evidence related to the separate, personal theft. This is the wire transfer confirmation for the $50,000 illegally removed from my niece's custodial trust fund. As you will see, the funds were moved directly into Mr. Vance's personal account, which he then used to pay his accomplice. I attached the scanned bank statements, the forged signature on the withdrawal slip, the wire transfer receipt. The corporate theft would ruin his reputation. The mortgage fraud would ensure he was prosecuted, but the theft of $50,000 from a dead woman's child, that was to make sure he never saw the sun again. I hit send. I picked up my bag, turned off my monitor, and walked out the door. Miranda and I did not knock. We pushed open the heavy mahogany doors to the executive boardroom. The air inside was pressurized, suffocating. It was a tomb waiting for its occupants. CEO Caldwell, his face the color of wet cement, was at the head of the long, polished table. 4 other board members were seated, their expressions a mixture of fury and terror, like men watching a bomb squad work. And at the far end, flanked by 2 large men in Hallicon security uniforms, were the thieves. Julian was a ghost. He was a collapsed building. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie yanked loose at the collar. He had aged 10 years since the launch. He stared at the wood grain of the table, his skin waxy. Beside him, Serafina was unrecognizable. The vibrant, crimson-clad rock star was gone, replaced by a sobbing, hysterical wreck. Her mascara ran in black, agonizing rivers down her face. Caldwell shot up from his chair as we entered. Ms. Vance, Ilara, thank you for coming. As you can see, we are facing a catastrophic PR and data integrity event. I did not look at him. I treated him as if he were a waiter, irrelevant to my meal. My gaze was fixed, exclusively, on my husband. I walked slowly, the sharp click of my heels on the marble floor the only sound in the room, besides Serafina's desperate, wet gasps. I stopped 10 feet from him. You look tired, Julian, I said, my voice perfectly level. It must be all that hard work. That groundbreaking initiative really took a lot out of you. His head snapped up. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, and raw with panic. "Ilara," he cried, his voice cracking. You have to stop it. It's still wiping everything. You're destroying me. This is illegal. You can't do this." "Actually, Mr. Vance," Miranda Cole's voice cut through his hysteria, sharp and cold. She stepped past me and placed a heavy stack of documents on the polished table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "What is illegal is conspiring to install malicious code onto your employer's secure servers, which you did via your paid accomplice, Ms. Hayes. What Ilara did was simply activate a pre-existing security protocol on her own stolen intellectual property. This sent Serafina into a new fit. "You're a monster!" she shrieked, lunging forward in her chair before the guard put a hand on her shoulder. "You're a cold, empty bitch. He loves me, and you just can't accept that." I finally turned my gaze to her. It was like observing a specimen. "He didn't love you, Serafina," I said. "He loved your ability to steal my work. And as the entire financial world just witnessed, you failed." Miranda slid a much slimmer folder from her briefcase and pushed it across the table until it stopped directly in front of Julian. "Those are the divorce papers," Miranda stated. "You will not be getting a single cent." Julian just stared at the folder, uncomprehending. "The pre-nuptial agreement is ironclad," Miranda continued, addressing the room. "Section 4, subsection B. The Lincoln Park house is her premarital property. The $800,000 in the brokerage account was her premarital asset. The cars are leased to her company. You are left with your salary, your personal debts, and the clothes on your back. Sign it." A sound bubbled up from Julian's chest. It was not a sob. It was a laugh. A high, rattling, utterly unhinged laugh. He looked up at me, his eyes gleaming with a final desperate spark of malice. "You think you won," he spat. "You think you covered everything. You're so much smarter than everyone." He leaned forward, his voice a low, venomous whisper. "I took $50,000. From your niece's college fund, I took it, and I'll pay it back. Slowly. $10 a week, maybe $1 a week. I will hold on to that for the rest of your life. You'll never, ever be free of me." He smiled, a broken, bloody grin. He thought he had just played his last card. He thought he had found the one emotional string he could pull on forever. He expected me to scream, to cry, to finally break. I smiled back. "I know," I said, as if summoned by the words. The heavy boardroom doors opened again. It was not Hallicon security. It was Detective Miller, flanked by 2 uniformed Chicago police officers, their presence the radios, the holsters, the grim professional expressions was a brutal violation of the corporate sanctuary. Miller did not look at Caldwell or the board. His eyes found his target. Julian Vance. Julian's insane, triumphant smile froze and shattered. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a gray, slack-jawed mask of pure incomprehension. "You are under arrest." Miller's voice boomed in the silent room. "For felony bank fraud related to a forged mortgage application, and for theft from a minor's trust fund." The 2 officers moved past Miranda. They pulled Julian's arms behind his back. The sound of steel handcuffs ratcheting shut. Click, click, click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. No, Ilara, you can't." Julian was limp. All the fight gone, all the air stolen from his lungs, as they hauled him to his feet. He looked at me, his eyes no longer angry, just hollowed out with the blank, stunned terror of a man who finally understands the trap he is in. I held his gaze for a second, then deliberately turned my head. I looked at Serafina. She was frozen, her mouth open in a silent scream, her eyes wide, finally understanding the abyss she had fallen into. I gave her the same cold, flat smile she had given me in her email. "I won! You fool!" I turned, my back straight, and walked out of the room, leaving Miranda Cole behind to manage the surrender. I did not look back. Thank you for listening to this story. Please comment below where you are listening from, share your thoughts, and be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.